I feel like the work life balance has become this myth. People kind of strive for it, but a lot of people think it just doesn't exist.
You're listening to the Architect My Life podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping empower women creative entrepreneurs such as architects and designers have it all: business growth, financial freedom, and health and wellness. I'm Shlachter, your host and CEO of MGS Global Group. This podcast is also brought to you by the MGS Global Group. We provide BIM modeling and drafting services to overwhelmed architects and design firm owners. Now let's dive into this episode. Our guest today is EunHea Kim of Pen110 Studio. EunHea is an interior designer with 15 plus years of experience, previously working in-house at world-renowned luxury brands. Having honed her knowledge in integrating design and construction with the brand growth strategies at both regional and global levels, she has gone on to build an extensive portfolio in boutique commercial, private, and creative projects. Today, she leads Pen110 Studio since 2016, with an eye for artful curation and confident storytelling, a rich sense of history, culture, and community, and a je ne sais quoi of being very New York. As a self-taught artist in drawing and illustration, she finds as much beauty in the great histories of the world as she does in small intricacies of everyday life through exploration of her personal artwork. We recorded this episode from Austin, Texas, from a conference that we attended together. Take a listen. Welcome to the show, EunHea.
Thanks for having me here, Aya.
So we're actually recording from a conference in Austin, Texas. Really cool 2-day event about hospitality and the trends and the future of hospitality. So stay tuned till the end, where I ask EunHea her feedback and exciting takeaways from this confab. So EunHea, I'm really happy. Finally, this is actually our second time doing this because my audio was so bad. But I'm gonna go straight into my first question for most of my creative entrepreneurs. I ask, what is your childhood experience, memory, or a person that led you to your career path as a designer?
So for me, as I was growing up, I've always been a creative. I was always doing drawings and illustrations, which also still kind of has come back now in my adult life. But in terms of the interior design side, I've always been into organizing and creating different spaces with furnitures, both at home and in different spaces. And it's kind of funny because I was watching a TV show when I was young, and a character on the show was this interior designer. And for some reason, I mean, I don't remember the show now, but for some reason, that was around middle school. I just thought it was so fascinating, even though it was a TV character, that was something I decided I wanted to do. Once I get to college and afterwards, without even really knowing what was an interior designer. And it's just led me to this path until now.
Yeah, I believe that, childhood memories really are very impactful and they really can change lives. Let's talk about your background. Where are you from originally and how you got to New York?
Well, I was actually born in South Korea, but I came here to the States when I was very, very young and moved around a lot around the States. So my childhood has been pretty nomadic in a sense. I used to say, and sometimes I still do, I'm from nowhere. I did end up going to undergraduate in the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, but I wouldn't say I'm from Minnesota. And I actually ended up leaving after graduation to attend graduate school at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York, to get my master's in interior design. And it's been almost 20 years since I've been in New York now. And I don't think never say never, but I don't really see myself leaving anytime soon. So, definitely here to stay.
Yeah, I love New York City. I used to live there for like 6 years, I think. So I get it. Interesting fact about EunHea. We talked about this, a few months ago. Can you talk about your thesis in college and where you had to visit?
Yeah, in my graduate school thesis, it's very different from my career path that has evolved since then, but my graduate thesis was all about community public housing. especially for underserved neighborhoods and communities, or third world populations. And part of it was doing studies, especially in maybe more socialist or communist countries, and studying the architecture and interior design of those spaces. And for some reason, I thought it would be great if I could go to North Korea. And for those of you listening, not South Korea, North Korea, to find out more information. And so I ended up going in the mid 2000s to North Korea for a week as part of my thesis research. And I knew but didn't know at the same time. Like, it was just a completely different experience. It's like you're walking into a time travel of a place that looks like it was stuck from the 50s. Despite everything, I mean, for me, it was a very unique and personal experience, especially growing up as a Korean American. And I mean, they even took us to an architecture school as part of like my thesis visit. And I got to speak with some architecture students there. But I mean, obviously, they didn't really take us to some of the actual community public housing that I was hoping to visit. But I guess I would say that was more one fun fact about me. The irony is I came back to complete my thesis and got in a car accident. I was hit by a gypsy cab in Brooklyn in the middle of my thesis year, and my advisor had actually told me that because of my injuries and things like that, I was out of class for a while. So turns out I wouldn't have been able to graduate because I wasn't able to stay on schedule, unless I pivoted my thesis into something else that I could finish on time to still graduate on time, which is what I ended up doing, and is completely 180 and then some compared to my original thesis.
It's like the biggest mistakes happen and become the biggest blessings, I suppose, right?
Absolutely. It's kind of funny how things turn out. So
yeah, always for the better. I'm very optimistic. But anyway, I met EunHea like 12 years ago, and we were working in the retail space. So you're a very seasoned retail architect. Like, you've done a lot of amazing projects in the thousands. So can you tell us about your retail experience and your first job or first retail job experience, and yeah, talk about that.
Gosh, it's been 12 years?
Wow.
Really?
I think 2010.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess so. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I started working at Coach back in 2006. No, yeah, 2006. And I was basically at a very junior level. And over the years, it's gone up from there. So how I ended up meeting Aya was a few years later, after I left Coach and I went to Ralph Lauren for a little bit. I ended up going to Michael Kors, and basically, when Michael Kors was still a small name in a sense, not that many stores, not that many shops, and then their growth really exploded during that time period. It was a unique time period for sure. As I had mentioned, my team and we worked on thousands of projects all over the world, and that's actually how I came to connect with Aya and her team and MGS Global for helping us draft and do a lot of the drawing sets that really we wouldn't have been able to grow without. And she was really instrumental as part of our team. And it's really just something that I think you and I were just talking about. It can't be duplicated again. Like, it's hard to go back and figure out how we did that, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were doing at our peak over 100. I mean, I don't know how. I wasn't sleeping much those days.
I wasn't either. It was definitely the rat race of, 7 days a week and a lot going on. I think at one point I had counted in our top year, we were doing over 800 to 1,000 projects plus in that 1 year. And that's pretty crazy and considerable. I mean, we had a small team in house, and you had a small team as well. And we were just, we were a machine.
Rolling it out, literally.
And sometimes I got questions afterwards, after I left Michael Kors, on how we did that and like, what's the secret? And there is no secret. It was, I think, our success was really about trusting each other and working together to create all of these processes that everyone was on board with, to be able to really run that way. After Michael Kors, I went to Bottega Veneta with a Caring Group, and I was there for a good year and a half. And then that was about in 2015, I decided to leave.
That's great. So while you were in retail, and I'm curious because a lot of us firm owners and entrepreneurs, we've never worked for publicly traded companies or big companies. So as somebody who now has a business, but who was in corporate America for such a long time, what pros and cons can you share us? What you learned in a big organization, the good and the bad?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, the pros have definitely been, different levels of process and organization. I know you have the tiers of hierarchy, and that can be good or bad in any organization, especially in the corporate structure. But when you're seeing a company trying to grow and expand, to the level of some of these brands are, I think that was one positive takeaway in terms of, you really have to have a plan and a process in place. It doesn't just happen from just a decision from like last night. So I think that was definitely I would consider that a pro. I think another pro is also interesting to see how brand strategy is done. I mean, I'm in interior design and doing store planning architecture for these stores and its constructions, but seeing brand strategy from the marketing and operations levels to retail sales and training, and really seeing like all the parties involved, I think that was also an experience from the inside, really. Some of the cons, I think, are also things that maybe you would typically find in a corporate structure. I think it is also prevalent everywhere. But the things that I know I experienced personally have been a bit, passive aggressive, misogynistic tendencies, and roadblocks, especially as a professional woman. And you have other people also in your lateral roles where they're men and getting more than you, and more opportunities, more time, and things like that. So navigating that and the expectations of being a female professional, especially in a retail fashion world where you're commented on your looks and how you dress and did you smile today, and that kind of nonsense. I mean, it still exists. It's just nobody's talking about it. I think the other con that I would add is that retail brands, a lot of them seem to shuffle the same people, and there isn't as much new creative and innovative ideas. You hear about creative directors, they stay at a brand for like not even 5 years, and then they're on to the next. And it just becomes like this incestuous pool from the top down. Everyone's trading and going to the same place, and at some point you're just doing the same thing. So I think it's really I would see that as a con, but in the industry, but it's something that I would think does need to be shaken up to change and inspire actual innovative
Yeah, and
new ideas.
when you and I were working together, by the time you left, we were doing so many projects. Like I was really burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, were you ever burnt out?
I was beyond burned out. I mean, when you and I had met, I mean, I was burned out so much. I remember I'm going into the office 7 days a week. When a company turns global or a brand turns global, you're in the headquarters, you're dealing with Asia, right? And the time difference. But then the next time difference zone is Europe. And then you have California and the West Coast, and you have, it was basically a lot. Like I wasn't really starting any actual work until 6 p.m., 5 or 6 p.m. So I know I definitely experienced burnout, but you're also in it's kind of like a weird numbing high because of the pace, and it's, partially it's exciting, but at the same time, it's just going so fast. There's no time to stop and breathe and think about it.
Yeah. I mean, we did so much that, yeah, we kept on going until like thousands, right?
Mhm.
So you're right. We don't know how well we did until at the end when you're out of the rat race.
Mhm.
So, not that being said, could you tell us about Pen110 and your origin story of your design, your interior design company?
Sure. I left in the retail corporate world in 2015. I think part of that was burnout. I had experienced the death of a loved one, passing of a loved one, and that had a really profound impact on how I view life and the time that we have left. And I knew I didn't want to continue spending that time with working 7 days a week and dealing with, all these bullshitters and, all of that politics stuff, and versus actually working on projects that either make an impact or that I would be proud of. So around 2016, end of 2015, I was talking with a colleague of mine, who is one of my work partners now, and she convinced me that I should go on my own. She was like, "You can totally do it. You have the personality, you have the drive. Why go back when you can work for yourself and set up these things that you want for yourself?" And it was really scary. I'm not gonna lie, to be honest. I had never done that before, and I thought I would go back into a corporate role, and it didn't turn out that way. And I guess 7 or 8 years later, here I still am.
Very successful at that. Anhe has very amazing and well-known clients, but we can't name that yet. So, how do you manage multiple projects as a solo entrepreneur? I'm sure a lot of architects and designers have one or two employees. So, how do you manage all the things that you're doing?
Well, for the interiors projects, it really comes down to having, for me at least, a strong network. So I work with several other very strong, also female joint venture business partners. And we collectively work on different aspects of projects, on each other's projects, actually. And it's become a strong support system, which has been really good to have over the years. But I know also for myself, whether it is interior projects or outside of that, for me, there's two things that I consider to be very important, and that is setting boundaries, both professionally and personally, but also really focusing on work-life balance. I feel like the work-life balance has become this myth. People kind of strive for it, but a lot of people think that just doesn't exist, and that things are, oh, that's just the way it is in the work world. But it doesn't have to be the way it is. You have to start making some changes and actually committing to it. And I think that's something that it goes back to part of my origin story, and especially seeing the time that we have left. What kind of impact and what kind of time do we want to do with our own time, and our own story, whether it's out loud or something silent just for us. And I think that's those two are become really, really important factors, for not only myself, but I try to uh, respect that about my partners as well, and as well as the setting up boundaries.
That's good. I guess, after burning out for so many years, it's a positive that we're able to make boundaries and really make time for ourselves, personal time, not just work, which is, part of being an entrepreneur. If we want to succeed as entrepreneurs, we need to also spend time for ourselves. So that's great. So,
Absolutely. I mean, we're also, before entrepreneurs, I think one of the things we learned today, which I know we haven't gotten to yet, is like we're human first, right? So if we're doing all of this work since 4 in the morning, but we're not getting any sleep, I mean, how effective and efficient are we really being? And I think
Yes.
that's something important.
Yeah, and I think our audience needed to hear that because some of our listeners are also employees who want to get out of the workforce, but and start their own. And this has really been an amazing episode because, like you said, you were an accidental entrepreneur. I mean, you didn't really plan for it, but it happened, and 8 years later, you're working with just some of the top brands in the industry on your own. So, what's next for Pen110 and EunHea Kim? Like, what other exciting projects do you want to have this year? But before you answer that, I think we can tie it to the next segment, our Austin trip.
Oh,
We're
sure.
here in Austin for the Independent Lodging Congress, and it's for the hospitality group. What did you think of today, EunHea?
I thought today was really very interesting. I thought it was also very real. A lot of things that were shared today, I know for me, I've thought of, but I don't hear a lot of industry people that I have met in the past say those things. Um, and just being honest and, the no bullshit. And I thought that was pretty refreshing, actually. Um, some of the things, are things that I've already either had a feeling about or that I knew, but um, so I definitely learned a lot all around, especially about relationships, and especially this core group seems to value um, the human connection, and really taking that next step into staying true to yourself.
Yeah, it has been an amazing few days. So this hospitality conference is actually a combination of people in the boutique hotel industry, and Anhe and I were talking about exploring diversification for project types, right?
Yes, I think if we're talking about manifesting for this year, I mean, I really have to thank Aya for basically introducing me and convincing me to come to the indie confab, and I think that's something that I've been thinking about in terms of always pivoting, learning to pivot and diversify, and just expanding as well. It's one thing to be comfortable in your bubble, but the one thing that I know, and I'm going to admit it myself, I'm not always the easiest or the the best at pivoting, um, or liking change, actually, but it is necessary, and I think it's definitely a huge part of growth, um, for whether it's yourself, or and your business, and seeing where things take you.
Yeah, this is what we're doing. We're manifesting really cool projects in the hospitality industry. And the reason why I invited you on, Hey, is because you're also an artist. And, that's, she has another, passion. And I don't, but yeah, we'll talk about it in a few. But, um, yeah, so Anhe, I thought you'd like it because people were really creative and independent.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like cool and hip, and you live in Brooklyn.
Oh,
So that's why you were perfect for this crowd. um, anything else you want to add, Anhe,
um,
about diversification or?
well, I think part of being able to work for myself, and what I was mentioning before about the work life balance. I mean, I know for me, it's also given me opportunity to control my time and how it's spent in terms of work projects. I know something that I've been wanting to get more into, and that I've done a little bit of, which is part of the art side of me, is doing community or based projects, or community based art projects, whether that's murals or working with different community organizations, for just being able to share creative art, and sometimes it's even those small steps that make a huge impact, or that I'm hoping it would make a huge impact. I know definitely that before, when I was in the corporate world, I never had time. I mean, I didn't even have time to sleep, much less do any of these other things. So I think that's one thing that I am intentionally mindful of, in terms of making time and space to do those things, because I think it's really important.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing, Anhe, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Where can our audience find you?
Sure. So they can find me on my website, www.pen110.com. We're also on Instagram at pen110.studio. And we're actually going through a little bit of a mini rebrand. So hopefully that will be up by spring, and possibly more to come. Who knows?
Thank you, Anhe.
Thank you.
That was EunHea Kim of Pen110 Studio. Thanks for listening to this episode of Architect My Life, a podcast brought to you by the MGS Global Group. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you would like to add to the conversation through your own experiences, I encourage you to be a guest on one of our upcoming episodes. Visit architectmylife.com/apply to learn how. I firmly believe that a strong community drives change and fosters success. If you'd like to be part of this community, join the All-Female Architect My Life Facebook group. Please take a moment to review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd love to hear from you. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at aya_architectmylife and Architect My Life Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Aya Shlachter. Until next time.